Oh, what's going on, GameLeap? This is the Jizz, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about 10 champions that the best challenger players in the world are currently abusing for 12.1 and will certainly abuse for 12.2 when it hits the Rift in just a few days' time. So to know the runes, the builds, the summoner spells, and why these champions are so broken, make sure you stick around for the whole video, and also make sure if you want to master any of the champions or even the roles these champions are played in, to check out the GameLeap website, which is linked in the description and comment section, because the best challenger players and coaches around the world are uploading up to 20 videos a week for our subscribers, so get that exclusive access by signing up, and let's get into the video. So starting off the countdown, we have an unstoppable force in the mid lane, who is most of the time going to be picked as a top laner, but Tryndamere in the mid lane is one of the best picks for 12.1 and 12.2 because he is so hard to move out of it. If you're playing a mage like Victor, who's very popular at the moment, or even a melee champion like Yasuo, Yone, or Zed, Tryndamere is so hard not only to beat, but he's always going to have lane priority because of his amazing push potential and because of his strong trading potential as well. You really can't get close to him because he can jump on your head straight away, so he's still a very underrated pick in the mid lane and pick nowhere near enough. Now as far as the actual setups go here, you can see that Tryndamere with lethal tempo, very standard rune page, even though lethal tempo is getting changed for 12.2, so the attack speed in the early game is going down, but as the game progresses you're going to get more attack speed if you're a melee champion. The same goes for ranged champions, but when you're playing Tryndamere, just make sure to max your Q first, because we're all about sustaining during the laning phase and pushing and roaming. That's how we're going to win our game. And it's also interesting to note here that the best Tryndamere players in the world in the mid lane, if you look at the minor runes for a second, there's an attack speed shard in there, and then 2 resistant runes. So whether it's 2 armor runes, 2 magic resist runes, or an armor and magic resist, it really depends on who you're against. So we're not taking any adaptive force here, because once again, we are all about sustain. This coupled with second wind, there is no way anyone is going to push you out of the mid lane, and once you do get your Berserker's Greed Spike, you still have easily enough kill potential as soon as the enemy mid laner makes a mistake to jump on their head and kill them. So Tryndamere comes in at number 10, but beating Tryndamere to number 9 in this countdown is arguably an even better carry champion, and this one resides in the bot lane, and this is Blitzcrank, obviously as a support. And for Blitzcrank at the moment, because lots of champions you're going to play against in the AD carry role, so we might be talking these lethal tempo abusers, so if we think of Caitlyn, Jinx, Ashe, and then if we think of other champions who are strong in the bot lane at the moment, like Jhin and Kog'Maw, these champions don't have dashes in their kits, so Blitzcrank's agency in the bot lane goes through the roof just because the meta in the bot lane at the moment, well, there's not that much mobility going around. So if you can land one of your rocket grabs, it is probably going to result in a kill and you snowballing that lane and hopefully the game as a result. And to increase this kill threat even more, what you can do is get Shurelya's as your mythic item instead of Lock of the Iron Solari, because ability haste is such an important stat. Having your rocket grab on a lower cooldown, this is really important for the mid to late game and getting picks, and also the active in Shurelya, so it's giving you movement speed. This can allow you to close the gap to the enemy champions so you can land more Qs and get more kills. So Blitzcrank comes in at number 9, but just ahead of Blitz coming in at number 8 on this countdown, this is another lethal tempo abuser, but this one actually does reside in the top lane, even though Tryndamere does as well. But for Aurelia in the top lane, I'm not actually talking about lethal tempo Aurelia, I'm talking about Conqueror Aurelia, because ever since Riot kind of semi-reverted Conqueror's stacking to 5 seconds a few patches ago, for champions like Aurelia with innate attack speed, lethal tempo, it's a bit overkill. The Conqueror damage and the healing once you get to max stacks, this is way more useful than the actual attack speed. Even though auto attacks are a big part of your kit, the extra damage you can do, in particular with your Blade Surge, this is the key here. But just to make sure we don't run out of attack speed, this is why we're running Alacrity and then an attack speed minor rune in our rune page, so we still have enough to actually duel the enemy top laner. Now as far as our build goes, I understand that shield bow got nerfed last patch, so the shield is smaller and you're also not getting as much attack damage right off the bat. But here's the thing, you're still getting the bonus attack damage when the shield procs, which is really what you're getting the item for, the lifeline passive, and this is all that matters. This is actually when you become an even scarier champion, and in the top lane as well for Aurelia, pretty much every champion you go against is going to be building some form of HP. This is why Blade of the Ruined King as your first item is such a good first item, because you can shred these champions who are building HP as part of their kit. So Aurelia in the top lane comes in at number 8. Just be very careful against some champions like Tryndamere for example, because you can get dumpstered. So as a counter pick, she is for sure one of the best champions in the game. But beating Aurelia to number 7 on this countdown, we're heading back to the bot lane here and talking about one of the 280 carries on this list, and this one is Draven. And we're talking specifically about Halo Blade's Draven, and look at this win rate in Challenger, 62% over 100 matches. This is real. And I also love the fact that these players are going Exhaust as their second summoner spell with Flash, because Exhaust is Draven, you're going to get jumped on. You don't have the best mobility in the game, and without your stand aside, so your E, it's very easy for enemy champions to access you. So having Exhaust, if a LeBlanc jumps onto you, a Zed jumps onto you, a Lee Sin jumps onto you, because you have Exhaust, you have the dueling potential, the 1v1 power to actually go toe to toe toe with these enemy champions. And let's be honest, in solo queue, this is really important because your support is probably not going to peel you. This gives you the ability to fend for yourself, and because Draven is one of the best 1v1 AD carries in the game, you know, team fighting for sure you can do it, but really you're just about single target damage and blowing champions to bits. This is why we're going Gale Force on the Collector, because it's giving you the execute damage you need to one-shot squishy champions. So Draven with Hail of Blades is for sure one of the scariest carry champions on the Rift, 12.1 and the ensuing 12.2. But beating Draven to number 6 on this countdown, this is one champion that is getting picked so much at the moment in pro play, and you know why? Because she's so good. This is Gwen in the top lane, and thanks to those HP buffs a couple of patches ago, Gwen has really taken off in terms of popularity, but also win rates. Look at this, in over 60 games, a 72% win rate with this rune setup. So we're taking Conqueror, not lethal tempo, because we don't really need Conqueror. We have the attack speed from our E and the actual damage and then healing we get from Conqueror. This is really worth it, and because the stacking is now back to 5 seconds, this is just more optimal than just like Aurelia to make up for the lethal tempo that we're now not taking. This is why we're running Alacrity and also an attack speed minor rune. And for your summoner spells as well, I really like it for Gwen because we can run Ignite and Teleport. Okay, Teleport is nerfed for the first 14 minutes, but Ignite is going to give us the kill threat we need during the laning phase, and Teleport if we do fall behind, because we're such a good scaling champion anyway, this is going to keep us in a game, or if you are actually ahead, snowball you out of control. But maybe one champion who's actually just better suited for carrying in solo queue, this is the best AD carry at the moment in Challenger across the world, and this is Twitch. And unlike Draven, Twitch really isn't the best champion during the early laning phase, because you hit nowhere near as hard and it takes a bit of time to stack your contaminate and deal tons of damage. But for Twitch at the moment, because the bot lane meta, there are lots of champions you do well against who are getting picked a lot. So if we think about these immobile AD carries we mentioned for Blitzcrank, as Twitch, when you come out of your stealth and you use your spray and pray, getting to max stacks is going to be super easy because they're not going to be able to get out of range quick enough, so you can deal the max damage with your contaminate and just unleash. Now it is true that the laning phase might be difficult, so it's important to try and pick Twitch when you have a peeling support next to you. So if we're talking Lulu, Yuumi, Soraka, Sona, picking a Twitch with a Blitzcrank for example, okay, it might work in some games. And of course we're going lethal tempo as our keystone, which is kind of getting buffed for 12.2. So at the moment it's still good because it's giving you 7% attack speed per stack for ranged champions. But next patch, even though this is lower in the early game, in the late game this is up to 9%. This is when you are an absolute weapon, and one-shotting enemy champions will be super easy, so you'll be getting an extra 12% in max stacks, and your range combined with your ultimate, no one is going to be able to escape this. This is why Twitch has to come in on this countdown, so make sure you guys pick him. Now beating Twitch to number 4 on this countdown is one of the most dominant champions at the moment, and this is Twisted Fate in the mid lane, who is banned in Korean Challenger for example over 20% of the time. This champion, when you see him in lower elos, you probably think, oh my god, I'm gonna absolutely dumpster this Twisted Fate. But in higher elos, because people know how to navigate and pilot on this champion, it's very hard to stop a Twisted Fate from doing what he wants to do. Now one of the big reasons Twisted Fate is so broken at the moment is because of the teleport change. So the fact that champions can't TP to minions or wards or thresh lanterns or pets or whatever it is, they can only TP to towers now before the turret plates die. This is of course the laning phase, and during this time games are often decided. So for a champion like Twisted Fate, who has a point and click ultimate essentially, it is just so broken and goes up in value. This is the big reason why TF is just so busted. Now apart from this, what else are we thinking here? Well, running Ignite, we don't really need TP anymore. Ignite, one stun card, one gank you get from your jungler, hopefully. That's probably going to result in a kill. And also taking Predator. It's actually kind of underrated for the lane, but also really good because roaming around the map these days just has more of an impact, because champions, they don't have teleport, so getting to the fight before your opponent, this is even more important. And as far as your build goes, very standard stuff here with Lucidity Boots, Everfrost, which is still 2800 gold, and then of course Rapid Fire Cannon. And we also have another item that might be picked instead of Zonya's as your 4th item, and this of course is Lichbane, which is getting some really nice buffs. So not only are you getting 15 ability haste now right off the rip, but the cooldown on the Spellblade passive is also down to 1.5 seconds. But beating Twisted Fate to number 3 on the countdown is maybe a champion who is a little bit scary to play against, and this is Qiyana in the mid lane. And the reason I say Qiyana is scary to play against is because one misstep and she can definitely kill you. She still has the burst potential, and even though she is getting nerfed next patch, so the bush duration, this is down, and you're also not going to be regenerating as much HP because this is down 1.5 seconds the HP regen. So for laning, this is actually kind of important. The point still stands that Qiyana has some of the best burst damage in the entire game, and the fact that most fights during the mid to late game are going to operate around the dragon and baron areas and in the rivers, this means your ultimate, your supreme display of talent, is always going to have a big impact. Even if you don't hit the champion you really want to hit, it's probably going to hit at least 3 other enemy champions. So Qiyana with Prowler's Claw, which got buffed if you remember at the start of the preseason, which has stayed the same, so it's 100 gold less, the active is dealing more damage, and then with Ghostblade, so even though this item is now 3000 gold, it gives you the movement speed you need to get around the map. Remember, because we're not running teleport, and teleport has been nerfed. If we can even rush a Ghost Blade in some games where you think roaming is going to be important, this is a really good strategy because you can get to the fights before the enemy champions, and that's honestly more important than what you actually do in the fights. So Kiana comes in at number 3, but beating Kiana to number 2 on the countdown is one of the most consistent champions on the Rift at the moment in higher elo, and this is Poppy in the top lane. And Poppy, to be honest, in any game you're in, is going to have value. Even if you can't win lane, you just bring so much to a team composition because you can cuck so many champions. Think about Kiana, for example, who we just mentioned with her E. Even if you're not playing against a Kiana in the top lane, if they have a mid laner who's Kiana, Poppy does very well. But more to the point, if their top laner is actually a champion with a dash, so we might be talking someone like a Jax, maybe a Tryndamere, maybe a Camille. Poppy, because of your W, you can stop these champions from doing what they want to do, and she's such an amazing counter pick and just a straight up nullifier of some of these champions who love to dash around the top lane. And it's also important in your runes here to run not just shield bash, but also revitalize, because this is going to increase the power of your passive shield, which is important during the laning phase and playing around this and collecting that token off the ground. And just look at these win rates as well, almost 60% for running this rune page and almost 60% with flash and teleport. Teleport is still important because we do want to influence these team fights. We have a very nice kit for it. So if you are a top laner, Poppy at the moment is getting abused by the best players in the world in the highest of elos, so make sure you do the same in whatever elo you are in. But beating Poppy to number 1 on this countdown is another top laner, but a bit like Tryndamere. We're not actually going to play this top laner in the top lane, we're going to play Renekton in the mid lane. And this is one of the big reasons why Renekton is banned a lot in pro play, because you can flex him in the top lane and in the mid lane, and in the mid lane you have very few losing matchups. If you can slice and dice and get on the enemy mid laner and land your W, because these champions are typically more squishy than those you find in the top lane, you are going to kill them and snowball out of control. Also, because you're playing Renekton in the mid lane itself, you have access to other parts of the map, because when you do play Renekton in the top lane, this is one of the big weaknesses. You can't really influence the map that much, especially if you're running Ignite. This is why in the mid lane with Ignite, Renektons win 67% of their games in high elo. So an incredibly underused pick is Renekton in the mid lane, and also make sure to run 2 adaptive force. We don't really need the attack speed, we're all about one-shotting the enemy champion with one combo. So those were the 10 best champions, guys, that are being abused in high elo at the moment in 12.1, and I guarantee you these champions will still be extremely strong for 12.2, so make sure you play them, copy down the runes, the builds, the skill order, the summoner spells, all of that cool stuff, copy that down, use it in your games, let me know in the comments what you think of the champions, and if you actually do try some of these out. And until tomorrow's daily upload, this has been the Jizz.